Well, I'm up on the northeast coast of England, border of Scotland, at some Abs Nature Reserve. Lovely bit of coastline around here. I've been shooting along here for the last few days, made a few videos, which you can see on my E6 subscription if you want to go and see them. Well, I thought I'd do a video today about some new filters I'm using, and I thought I'd come to this little lock here, which is in between the coast. The coast's over there, and this is a lovely little lock in between. This is my lock. So I thought I'd come and shoot this rather than do the coastline. So the filters I've got today are the ProGlass IRND filters from LEE Filters. It's a new range of ProGlass ND filters, built to a higher grade than the standard sort of little stopper and big stopper. So I've got myself some of these and thought I'd test them out and do a little comparison between these and the older ones. This is by no means a gear review. I don't do gear reviews. It's just my little opinion, what I think of these filters and how they compare. Now these filters are supposedly built to an even higher quality standard than the standard big stopper and little stopper. Completely neutral, so there should be no colour cast with these. Better clarity and better reproduction of blacks if there's any blacks within the scene. And they come in these really natty looking slip cases. Look really well made, look really smart. Good way to protect the filters, so that's good. Now these filters are also completely neutral across the entire filter. If you ever use the big stopper or the little stopper, you may know that they can vignette a little bit on the corners where they get slightly darker, but these have been made to a higher quality standard so that the ND effect, the number of stops, covers the whole filter. So what I plan to do today then is just take a standard shot of this scene without a filter, work out the exposure for doing a 6-stop and a 10-stop filter, and then just use the little stopper and big stopper for the first shots, and then the new 6-stop and 10-stop ProGlass versions with the same exposure. See if the exposure is the same, and then look at how the results compare, how much colour cast, just overall how the results turn out. Nothing scientific, just my little testing, just to really show me how they compare, and perhaps it will be useful for you as well. These filters obviously cost more than the standard NDs, the standard big stoppers and little stoppers, quite a bit more, but they're not meant to replace the filters, they're meant to complement. Sometimes you may want to have a colour cast in your scene. I do like the blue effect you get with the big stopper. I think if you're using a colour shot, not turn it to black and white, it's nice to have that blue tinge, so I don't always correct it with a white balance. So they're meant to complement those filters, so you'd have these as well as, not instead of, the standard big stoppers. It just gives you more choice. You can have a filter that gives a blue tinge, which you can keep or not, or you can have a much sharper, more clarity, more defined image from the new ProGlass range. So I'm just going to take a standard shot, standard exposure of this scene. I've got it on 200 ISO. White balance I have on sunny, as I always do, so there's no change of the white balance. F8 aperture, manual focus. Got the 2 grad over the sky just so I've got an even balance of the exposure. Just manual focus this then, and we'll take the shot and we can see what the corresponding shutter speed will be. So from this result you can see we've got a good histogram, and at f8 we get 1/30th shutter speed. So that's our base exposure. So take a look at the chart. You can see for 1/30th with a little stopper will be 2 seconds. So that's what we're going to use. So I'll switch it over to manual, pull in 2 seconds, take the picture. Okay, it's looking good. I'm going to do the same thing now, but use the 6-stop in the Pro IRND range. As you see, the same gasket around the edge, same design, so in use there's no real difference. So on first looks on the back of the screen you can see there is a difference. That's the standard shot, that's the little stopper, and that's the new 6-stop ProGlass. No colour cast, so things are looking good. So we'll do the same now with the 10-stop. Let's get a little chart out again. It's a cloudy day, so no exposure change, everything stayed the same. So for 1/30 of a second is now going to be a 30-second exposure. Take an exposure on manual of 30 seconds. Now the other thing with these ProGlass filters is that they're meant to be more accurate exposure values. So a 10 stop is meant to be exactly 10 stop. I know the big stopper often was slightly out, perhaps 10.5 stops, perhaps needed an extra bit of exposure. I think most people found that. So these are meant to be more accurate. So when you get 10 stops, you'll get 10 stops. Now I'm doing these shots with my EM1 rather than my EP5. So I've got noise reduction on because it does suffer a little bit of noise once you go too high. Normally I would shoot with my EP5 on these long exposures, but we're okay for now. So finally, I'll take the final shot with the ProGlass 10 stop, and we'll see how that compares overall. So same exposure, 30 seconds. We'll see how that works out. And yes, I have just noticed that the spirit level was just slightly off for the shots, but it's fine. The horizon's nice and straight, so all's good. Well, for an initial look at the back of the screen at the pictures, it's looking quite interesting. That's the big stopper. You can see the histogram we've got there, but it's a nice even exposure. And that is the Pro ND. More neutral. I think you can also see there how the sky and the edges of the water are being different. That's the big stopper, more of a vignette, and there's a more neutral overall tone from the new ProGlass NDs. Now, as well as the obvious colour cast, you can see the vignetting that has occurred with the big stopper. And here zoomed in, there's less clarity with the big stopper and getting punchier results with the ProGlass ND. Now the other filter that I was going to do a sort of review on but never got round to was the new medium grads from LEE Filters. I've had a set of these for a while now and I've been testing them out at different situations, but it's hard to do a review of them, mainly because you can have them and you can do without them, if that makes sense. For a while I used to have just the one set of grads, the hard grads. I didn't have soft grads, and I made do, and I had most situations covered. They were ideal filter. Eventually I bought the soft grads, so I had both sets, and so it opened up the opportunity to have the ideal filter at the ideal moment. And I think that's how you look at the medium grad. You don't have to have a set, you can do without them, especially if you've got the hard and the soft. That will cover most situations, but there will be situations where the hard is too hard, the soft is too soft, but the medium will be just right. You can call it the Goldilocks filter perhaps. So you don't have to have a set of these. But if you do buy a set and you complement it with the hard and the soft, it means you're covered for all situations, and you will find situations where it's just the right filter. So that's my kind of review. I know it's not much of a review. So there will be times if you have a set when it's the ideal filter to use for the ideal situation. But if you don't have it, you won't miss it. And that concludes Craig's authoritative and comprehensive review of medium grads. You see why I don't do gear reviews on this channel? However, I did actually use these earlier in the year on a shoot in Manchester in the city when I was preparing to do a review on these filters. So I'll throw back to that time and show you a situation where I was actually using them, where I was trying to show the comparisons between the hard, medium and soft. Take a look. Well, I've got a great setup down here to test out the 3 different types of filters. Got this area just down by the canal path. Got these railings leading up, making a nice leading line, diagonal lines across the picture. I'm actually underneath a bridge here, so it's quite shaded down here. But if you look up, you can see the nice building up there. It's again nice angular shape, but it's up in the lighter area up there, a little bit of blue sky behind it. So there's quite a contrast between the 2 areas I'm shooting, one from where I am and one from the buildings. So let's see how the 3 different grades of filter cope here and see which one's best to use. I think you'd agree that the medium grad was the ideal filter here. So would I buy the ProGlass ND filters? If you can afford them, yes, they are quite expensive even in the 7.5 range. The bigger sizes, the 100mm system and the 150, they get even more expensive. So it's not a cheap purchase, it's something to invest in. And if you want the best, these are the best. If you want a totally neutral filter, if you're fed up with those colour casts, this is the way to go. But don't throw away your big stopper and little stopper. They add a nice complement to those, so it's worth keeping those. And if you only have the big stopper and little stopper, don't worry if you can't afford it. They're great filters to use. You just know you've got to do certain things post-processing to get the ideal image. Or it can make the ideal image to start off with, if you do like that blue cast and if you do like a bit of vignetting, which I do. Some of my images suit that perfectly, so again, sometimes it's the ideal filter. Okay, job done.